Could today be the day that Manchester United and Real Madrid finally reach a total agreement with all elements of the deal to take Raphaël Varane, the 4 times Champions League and World Cup winner, to Old Trafford? The local press in Madrid believe this is happening imminently. But Dean Jones is going to be joining us this morning to go through this. Plus, we're touching on Haaland and his proposed move to Chelsea. What's going on with that situation? Danny Ings may be getting a move to Spurs. They're very busy in the market themselves right now. We're going to take a look at Liverpool and the Jordan Henderson contract situation as well. Make sure that like button has been smashed. And I am looking at all of you sitting there wondering whether you should push it or not. Yes, you. Now you're looking around. Yes, I'm talking to you. Smash that like button right now. Share this stream. Subscribe to the Football Terrace. Here we go. Morning, everyone. Morning, Dean. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, not too hot yet. We haven't reached peak temperatures for the day yet, have we? So it's nice to get this out of the way when I'm still reasonably cool. But I can already feel it starting to come through this window. That's why those blinds are shut.
Listen, it's been stinking hot. It's been I actually quite like it, to be fair. My skin doesn't. I'm very much red to peel to white kind of guy, no matter what I put on my skin. But I do enjoy the heat. And listen, when we're done with this show, I put my feet up and sit in the garden, maybe put my feet in the pool. It's going to be all right. It's going to be a nice day. Lots to talk about this morning. The transfer window is picking up pace as we speak. The poll right now, actually, Haaland to Chelsea was winning the race to be the first talking point. But actually, Raphaël Varane to Manchester United has just taken over with 46% of the vote, and that's where we're going to start this morning. Lots of trending out of Madrid that this deal is close to being completed or total agreement. I really get confused nowadays on what the right narrative or wording is, but it seems like it's closing in on completion, with Varane acting with a lot of respect towards Real Madrid, but seemingly just wanting to get this deal done and get to Manchester to start work. What's the latest as far as you understand it in terms of Man United's pursuit of the Frenchman?
I mean, at this stage, we've got to the point where Man United can kind of see the finish line on this deal. And that's the place which they dreamed of being in recent weeks. They honestly were never sure it would go this far. And I spoke to someone over the weekend, and I could just tell that the optimism and the hope was really there. And this week was always going to be a big week because it was a telling time for Madrid to actually get involved in this. And United obviously know that the player is keen at this point. We talked about that a week or two ago, that they finally believed that the player was actually serious about coming to United. And now Madrid have been informed that that is the case. Obviously, the player's got a year left on his contract, and now it's all about the fee, and United do not want to go over £50 million. So I'm a little bit sceptical about this being agreed in the next few hours, or whatever it was I saw reported this morning, because that's a lot of negotiating to be done between now and midday. But things are definitely heading in the right direction. And importantly, as somebody said to me yesterday, that Varane actually does expect to become a Man United player. So that's a big indication of how far this has gone at this point. Obviously, United are still slightly concerned that this won't happen, that they're not done yet. This is not a done deal, as we should say. But it's close, mate. It's getting close.
Yeah, it's from my point of view, as a United fan, I'm very excited. I had a conversation with a few of my old contacts and agents over the last few weeks, and again, they're pretty much on the same lines as you. They're not really interested in the story side of things. They're just their view is the base fee is pretty much done. It's more structural and legal. and getting things done in that space. And I'm a bit like you. Do I think we're going to get a holding tweet or message from the clubs at midday today to say we've come to an agreement? No, I actually think it may prolong for another. This is the thing. What happens? I don't even think it's about the big detail now. I think it's about the small stuff. Look how long it took from Sancho's medical till now, and we haven't had an official announcement. And that's because it's taken over a week to get the legal paperwork resolved. And it's about reviewing the clauses, about reviewing the add-ons and all these things that go into it. So I would say to fans, don't expect like a formal announcement like in the next few hours, like some people are looking at. But what does feel very real is the volume and kind of plethora of journalists, and some very credible from Madrid, are all saying the same thing. He wants to join United. He keeps informing Madrid that he isn't going to sign a new deal and that he's leaving. This doesn't have the same kind of feeling as Ramos at all to me anymore. Does that make sense? Like Ramos, it was maybe one outlet saying he wants to go to United and everybody else is pretty quiet. This is just everyone and their dog is a Man United player, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I was told that Chelsea had kind of tried to get involved in this as well. And that's interesting that Varane, if he's been given those two offered, would have chosen United ahead of Chelsea. We'll find out about that, I'm sure, in due course, whether that was true or not, and if he did have a decision to make. But I think the idea of Varane joining Man United for under £50 million is just an unbelievable deal. All the hype and attention has been around Jadon Sancho, obviously, and that was a great deal to get done. But Arsenal have just paid £50 million for Ben White, and Man United are paying similar money, maybe less, for Raphaël Varane. That's a win. That's a massive win for Man United. And at a time when there is a lot of pressure growing on the club to show the winning mentality, to show a formula of where this club is heading, like that ambition of signing Raphaël Varane potentially straight on the back of Jadon Sancho is unbelievable, especially for that kind of money. So let's see if they can get it done. But all the signs are very, very good for Man United right now, and especially when you've got talk of Trippier coming in as well, and then potentially one more on the back of that. This is a Man United team that should be going into next season genuinely believing that they can challenge for serious silverware.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And when you look at Varane from a footballing sense, he's just such a good centre back, and I know how good he is based on what I'm seeing from rival fans. So he's not joining for Oli or the club; he's joining for money. Or maybe he's not that good because no other major club went in for him. The typical, usual salty and bitter responses from rivals, and I've seen a few Man United fans triggered by it. And let them say it. Like we're literally about to sign one of the top 2 or 3 centre backs in world football for, as you say, the same price as Ben White. And Ben White's a talented player, there's no doubt about it. But he's not a mark at this point in his career on Raphaël Varane. Varane is 28 years of age. Look how excited Chelsea fans were last year for signing a top class centre back in Thiago Silva, who's 34, 35. He's got 7 years on him. He's being picked up for a snip. So yeah, it's fantastic business. And I think, as you say, you said it last week on Thursday, United fans can start getting excited. Do you think they could get a little more excited as of today?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, this is certainly heading in the right direction now. And I think particularly get even more excited now about the idea of that centre-back partnership between Harry Maguire and Raphaël Varane. That is unbelievable. Like the traits that those two have got, the way they should complement each other, it's almost perfect. And, I don't think United necessarily even planned for this to be the case because they didn't think Varane was going to be available this summer. But if this landed on their doorstep and they end up with that partnership, you could argue it's the best centre-back partnership in the Premier League next season. We'll have to see whether that comes through, but why not? It could be. It's a big, big step forward for Man United. It was a big flaw in their team. I still think that this could impact, who will leave the club. I think, now you really do have the temptation to get rid of Lindelof or Bailly. It looks like they would stay if you were signing like a Pau Torres or something. But if it's Raphaël Varane and Harry Maguire, then you have, I guess, Lindelof as your backup, and then you can move Bailly on. He signed a new contract, but it doesn't mean too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing on Raphaël Varane, what is the reported salary that you've heard that he'll be earning at Manchester United?
It's a difficult one. I mean, it was explained to me that he would become the most highly paid outfield player in terms of his basic salary. Now, I'm always very skeptical about reported salaries and stuff like that, so I don't know the exact fee. It will be 300 grand upwards. But obviously, at the same time, United are about to negotiate with Bruno Fernandes. Potentially, that Pogba will sign a new deal as well. So, mentioned on here before, they have to consider the structure of that deal. I think, if you're signing Varane and the caliber of player and that pedigree of player, it's kind of expected that he would be your most expensive and most highly paid player. So I don't think that's a big deal. But you do have to be careful about how much you break your structure by, because obviously players are going to want a taste of that. So even if he does become the highest paid outfield player, it will only be marginal compared to the players that have already proved themselves to be key to that side. So yeah, it's hard to put a figure on it at this moment, especially as it's not all completed yet. I think the basics are there for it, but that'll all be sorted out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I think is interesting as well. One thing clubs don't directly report on is exactly how much or the makeup of someone's. I get a sense that when you look at, for instance, the reported Rashford deal a couple of years ago when he re-signed, it was put out as 250 grand a week, and it's transpired actually it's 150 raising to 250 with goal and win bonuses. You'll probably find there's something in the region of, okay, it can go up to 300 grand a week, based on, Liverpool have done that model very, very well. I think their base salaries are something like 125 million a year, but it can raise up to 300 plus million if they're depending on performances and stuff like that. So
yeah, and it's I was just going to say, remember when Alexis Sanchez signed and it was reported he was earning 500 grand a week, and that Paul Pogba was rattled by it or something like that, and I don't think Alexis Sanchez ever took home £500,000 a week during his time at Man United, because there's no way to got even close to getting the knock-ons that would have got him to that. He would have bid on about 300, probably just under, and they would have all been add-ons that would have come with success, which Alexis Sanchez never had. So you've always got to be wary of this, and as fans, I would just say don't worry about it too much. Like, clubs have got wage structures in place. It's not like they're going to be going out and paying extortionate amount of money. And also look at the way that they dealt with Cavani when he came in. People were concerned about the type of money he'd be getting at his age and stuff. United dealt with that really well and actually got Cavani on a really good deal. So I think that the way that the club is being structured and run at the moment should give people optimism that this isn't going to prove a problem further down the line.
So totally agree. We are going to move on to Haaland and Chelsea in a moment, and our viewers really care about that. Do us a big favor first, please, ladies and gentlemen, and smash the like button right now. Let's get this past 1,000 likes on YouTube today. If you're watching on Twitch, please make sure you're hitting the follow button over there. And thank you very much to Grant for signing up to our official membership scheme today as well. In other news with Manchester United, as you've mentioned, Kieran Trippier's name is still hot on everybody's lips. Of course, Ruben Neves is a player heavily linked to that midfield role. And that CDM position is something that a lot of Man United fans are still very, very desperate to see resolve this summer. Do you think that could be maybe the next area they focus on after Raphaël Varane, the central midfield area, or is it more likely to be the fullback position?
I think they can happen side by side, to be honest, because the Trippier deal is already in motion. Atleti know the stance of the player and the club, and they basically now just have to find a replacement for Trippier so that he can go. They're not going to let him go otherwise, and so that needs to be sorted out. Trippier, as I'm told, is reasonably confident that will happen, even though publicly the stance is that he's not for sale. But then, definitely that final position will be in midfield. It's just a case of, is it a Ruben Neves? Is it a defensive midfielder? It's all going to depend, and it will really give us an insight as to what Solskjaer's mentality is going into the season, and what type of football we can expect from him. Is he sticking with that McTominay and Fred combination? Or is he going to be more open than that? Are you going to have a ball player like Neves that can come in? I'm told that the Neves pursuit is genuine, and while Arsenal were definitely the most active in that transfer and trying to get it over the line, United are still in the conversation. And Bruno Fernandes particularly is obviously very keen for Neves to come and join. And I think that the club are aware of that. So that's another interesting thing to consider in this. You know, when you're looking at the way United are being built, there's those like bonds throughout the team, which we talked about, particularly if Trippier comes in and you've got Trippier, Maguire and Shaw, and up front you've got Sancho, Rashford and Greenwood. Having, you know, Neves and Fernandes, these little things, they do matter. And so it does all get taken into consideration. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all and that's what it will be decided on, but there's just little factors that come into transfer sometimes that just give them the edge. And whether that's that the player, Neves, decides he would prefer to join Man United because of that, or because the club feel they can push the boat out and get the deal done, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Neves is a reasonably large amount of money. I mean, £35 million-ish we're looking at. Wolves are willing to sell. Neves does want a new challenge. So that all adds up. It's just whether United have that amount of money at the end of signing Varane, at the end of signing Trippier. Is the budget going to go that far? I'm not sure. The Glazers definitely want to make a statement and want to show fans that they are in this for the right reasons. That's up to everybody else's mind to make up. But listen, if they did end this window by signing Varane, Trippier, Sancho, and Neves, Camavinga, whoever it is, that's a strong statement. That's a big window. So, you know, a reason for United fans to be really excited. And then once that's all over, they can get their green and gold scarves out and try again anyway.
No, I totally get that. And I sort of just doing the maths while you're talking there as well, Dean. You think sort of 50-odd-ish for Varane, 73 for Sancho, 20-odd million. Maybe that's a little bit overshooting, 18 million for Trippier. Let's say it's 20 mil. If it was 35 mil for a Neves, you're then going into those realms of sort of 158 million for everybody all in. It's a lot of money, but it also isn't for the quality of player you're talking about is in all those players collectively. Considering that a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, the quoted price for Sancho was over £100 million. Suddenly you start to look at that as actually being fairly good value for money. It may take, as you said, maybe it's the sale of a couple of players as well. If they can pick up £20 million, 25 million for, say, Bailly. They can pick up 25, 30 million for, say, a Jesse Lingard, and maybe some of the kind of, you know, the Pereira's 5 million. So you might be, did you get what I mean? If we can make it maybe a few good sales in, that could change things.
Yeah, completely that. I'm not sure how much you would get for buy at this stage. We have to wait and see. But Lingard obviously is a possibility. At the moment, Lingard is focused on trying to win his place back at United and trying to prove that he is worth having for next season. I think he sees that Rashford's shoulder surgery as an opportunity. I know that we've spoken before about Martial probably hanging around as a result of that. And that is the case right now, but United would undoubtedly sell Martial if an offer arrived. To be honest, the only reason I would see Martial being bought is if Mbappe left PSG and went to Real Madrid. And I think that if that happened, then there's a definite chance that Martial be pushed into PSG and that could happen. But that's way off at the moment. Jesse wants to give this a proper shot. And West Ham, while they do want Jesse, check this out in the last couple of days just to see what their stance is. And they're basically going to remain patient for now. They'll probably wait until the season begins, see whether he is in that team or even on the fringes of it. And then they'll start to figure out whether they can make a bid, whether the player's still interested. I mean, there's a lot of factors to take into account there. There's one that Jesse loved being at West Ham last season, being the star of the show along with Declan Rice. But is Declan Rice still going to be there? What's his valuation now? Because when West Ham first signed him on loan and were looking to do loan to a perm, you were looking at around 15 million, and United were like, no, we're not doing that. Because if he does well for you, his value's going up. And now you're thinking, well, he's almost a £30 million player at the moment. I'm not sure West Ham would have £30 million to spend on Jesse Lingard. So there's a lot of things to consider there. Plus the fact that Jesse will probably get other options now beyond West Ham. Leicester had a bit of interest before. Maybe they come back in for him, a club of that level. But certainly somebody that you could get decent money for if he doesn't fit into the plan. I personally am sceptical about whether he fits into it now, because if Solskjaer hadn't seen enough of him before and didn't understand what he could give you, then I don't see why he is now after signing Jadon Sancho and stuff. But we'll have to see. Maybe Jesse has a great pre-season and does manage to push his way into there and give him no choice but to keep him.
Yeah, look, West Ham's approach is sensible. It echoes what they're trying to do with Tammy Abraham almost. Well, let's wait to see if Chelsea sign another striker. If they do, then we know that he's surplus to requirements, thus he's cheaper. If the first 2 or 3 games of the season start and Lingard's not on the bench, Man United can't sit there and say that he features in our first team plans, thus he's cheaper. So it makes sense for West Ham to do that. They can save themselves 10 million, 15 million on each player. That's a hell of a lot of money that they can reinvest elsewhere. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, no doubt. We mentioned Tammy Abraham there and Chelsea. I know that we've got a lot of Chelsea supporters on the football terrace every day, kind of clamoring and fighting for that Haaland update. Almost same with the Declan Rice updates as well. Yesterday, Jan Fjortov spoke on ESPN very much about a big 150 million pound. I know he had a slip of the tongue and said euros, but he later clarified he meant pounds. He feels Chelsea, although they kind of tried these players plus cash deals, have now almost been kind of debunked. They've said, "Oh no, we didn't do that." I'm not too sure I believe that element. What's the latest with this Haaland news? Is it still a case of Chelsea fans remaining patient? And do you think this colossal big bid will come in at some stage in this summer window?
I think Chelsea are trying to figure out how else they can get around it before they do make an offer of 150 million upwards. Because ideally you would look to avoid that. I've got to be honest that there are very few players that I think that would tempt Dortmund to do it. I actually think the only one really that fits in is Timo Werner. I think if you were to do 100 million and Timo Werner, maybe there's a conversation to be had there. It's been mooted before and it was knocked back, and the stance, and this was back in, when was I told, March, maybe April, was that Werner really didn't want to give up on this. He didn't want to be included in any kind of transaction like that. Who knows? Maybe that's changed since then. Maybe Werner would become more open to a transfer like that. Wouldn't surprise me if something like that was put forward before Chelsea go in there with the full amount of money to make that offer. Because it's just an easier way around it for them. It takes care of a couple of issues. I'm not saying that they've given up on Werner, far from it. But if it means if you lose Werner to gain Haaland, then so be it. You can find other way around those forward positions and rotations. So there's still plenty of work to be done. Dortmund's stance is still that it's cash only. That it's they see that figure of 175 million euros as it's basically a VIP pass or like a premium ticket. Like, this guy is not available right now. He's available in a year. If you want him now, then you pay this massive premium. It's like other things that happen in life. Like, something becomes available on the market, a special car comes out, is made. It's like, this car's not released until next year, but there's 10 available right now for a stupid amount of money. It's almost like that. If you want Haaland, you pay us ridiculous money. Otherwise, you can get in the queue and auction with everybody else in a year's time, and we accept that. We're only getting 75 million. We could have got more than that, but that's the way it is. So we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But it's not dead, far from it. And Chelsea need that man in the middle. If Haaland doesn't happen, if Lukaku doesn't happen, if Kane doesn't happen, they need someone. Someone's got to come in. I mean, Tammy, I'm sure some Chelsea fans still need to work out. Tammy wants to leave. He wants to join West Ham. West Ham at the moment can't afford £40 million to sign him. That's why Tammy's being mentioned in deals like Haaland, because obviously it would help Dortmund to take him and fill that void. But the player would prefer to stay in London, and West Ham's pretty good fit for him, to be honest. So yeah, they're going to need someone. Maybe they come into the Danny Ings conversation. Maybe they look to get involved in there. But as it stands right now, Danny Ings, I don't know if you saw reports, he wants to join Man United or Man City, and that is true. But Man United and Man City don't want him as it stands right now. Man United won't want him. There's no interest there. Man City potentially, like if every other option fell down, would. But I think Tottenham are going to make a bid very soon on Danny Ings. I don't think they will meet his 20 million valuation, from what I'm told. I think they'll lowball, but they'll get the ball rolling and they'll start to negotiate. And I think that once Tottenham go in and the innings, then we'll see who else is actually serious about that.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I think a few Chelsea fans in the comments saying we're not learning nothing new today about the Haaland situation. I'll be really blunt with the Chelsea fans, because there isn't nothing new. There isn't. The only thing to happen between now and the end of the transfer window is you put in a successful bid or you don't. That's it. Like the personal terms are not a problem. Everyone knows Chelsea wants him. Everybody in their dog knows, in their heart of hearts, if a big enough offer is made, Dortmund will say yes. It's down to your football club, Chelsea fans. It's down to Chelsea to put in the right bid. Don't expect them to just offer £150 million cash straight away. That would be idiotic. Of course, they're going to try some players plus cash. Of course, they're going to try to lowball and build their way up. They were always going to do that. So I know Chelsea fans are asking for new news every day, but there really isn't new news. The only other bit of new news that could be is the opposite to what Dean just said, as if to say it's dead and Chelsea are no longer pursuing it this summer. They are. It's just going to take time. I think I just keep saying this to Chelsea fans. You may not get him, but you have to remain patient. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. It is that. And, I'm surprised at how panicky Chelsea fans are, because I think that board and the recruitment staff have done enough to convince you in recent seasons that they've got a great business strategy, one of the best in football, not just in the Premier League. They've just made £50 million on a few players that literally weren't going to be in their teams or in their plans. And while you would think, well, Tomori could have been in our team, where he could have, we was excited about seeing him. Did you really think that those players were what was taken to retain the Champions League, to win the Premier League again? Because that's where Chelsea's mindset is right now. They're looking for players that are at the very top level and not emerging, that are already there, because they know how quickly you can fall away. They saw what happened to Liverpool last season, and it doesn't take a lot to just lose your grip. So that's why they're looking at that. And you could look at that £50 million that's been raised and think, okay, well, that 50 million can now go into one of those other deals that we've been talking about, whether it's Rice, whether it's Haaland. And there are other players on the fringes that could still come into the thinking, like Callum Hudson-Odoi. What do they do there? They're very torn over Hudson-Odoi. Tuchel rates him. He's a very good player, but there are flaws to what he brings to Chelsea. And if somebody did come in with a good offer, I do think they would consider it. At the moment, there isn't that offer, but there are players like that in this squad that still could become available, and that's why they have to do it, because they're building for the next step of this journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they just need to remain as patient as they need to be. Eric Blue here says personal terms haven't been agreed though. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, okay, officially no, but they're not going to be a problem. The personal term element of the Haaland to Chelsea deal, don't worry about it. It's not an issue. They know what the player would want, and Chelsea have made it abundantly clear that they would offer that if a bid gets accepted. So just relax about that element. It's a minor, brother. It's an absolute side dish minor. Don't worry about it at all. There we go with some Chelsea updates there. You spoke about Spurs going in for Danny Ings, which I think's an interesting one indeed. There is also some links with sort of central defenders. I know they're linked with the Atalanta centre back at the moment. There's also connections to Kabaka's that you mentioned. What's the latest on their sort of pursuit of new centre backs at Tottenham?
Yeah, I mean, with Tottenham, it's a very strange one to gauge because of Fabio Paratici's methods of work, really. I mean, he likes to register initial interest in a host of players, basically, that play similar roles. And then on the back of what they gauge from that situation, they decide whether to move forward with it. So they'll look at, okay, how receptive were the club of us approaching them? How receptive was the player about the potential of joining Tottenham? Now, what are the terms that would be needed around that deal? And he collates all that information and kind of starts to throw them out one by one until he's left with a shorter list, and then moves forward. So it's really difficult to gauge. who is actually a serious target for him right now. Danny Ings, I know for a fact it is one. That's why I've mentioned it straight off the bat. I know that Kabak is emerging as one just because Schalke are in a situation where they are basically having a cut price sale after being relegated last season. Kabak has played in the Premier League. They've seen what he's capable of in that environment. And now they think, well, Kabak at 10 million or less, that's a good opportunity. That's something that doesn't come along very often. And look, there are other deals that they're considering. There's no doubt about it. But there are basically opportunities that they can't turn down. So Tottenham are probably out there right now looking at 10 forwards, 10 defenders, and all the rumours you're reading are going to be true to an extent. But it doesn't mean that they're joining Tottenham. It doesn't mean that they're even going to get into the next stage. It just means that, yeah, that interest is there. They're registering that interest. And then discussions can open up. It needs to start happening soon, obviously, because we're heading to the end of July and we're only a couple of weeks away from the season, beginning. So Tottenham want to start moving now because they do need to get this club in order. So it'll be interesting. I think Tottenham is actually one of the most exciting clubs to look out for because not only have they got a new boss, they've got the Harry Kane situation, they've got new signings coming in, they've got Daniel Levy says that COVID's cost them 200 million. They've lost revenue. They've thought they were going to get Gareth Bale back. Now that's looking all very uncertain and very unlikely. So it's all up in the air. The only thing that's really certain is that Heung-min Son's going to, commit himself to the club, which is good news. But I think when he agreed those terms a few months ago, which was the case, and they were looking to announce it now, the landscape looks a bit different to how it does now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It certainly does. It certainly does indeed. Someone here says excited. Maria Williams says excited unless you are a Spurs fan.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I agree. I like. Look, Nuno was an underwhelming appointment. I understand that from terms of profile, from where he came from, but actually, people that have been working with him in this early time at Tottenham are pretty optimistic and reasonably excited about what he might be able to offer the club and how he might lead them forward. He's going to be very flexible tactically. He's very good at managing individuals and the collective. He can adapt to situations. He has a mentality whereby he can inspire big victories at key moments. And I think that it might not be a bad thing that people aren't expecting big things from him, because I think he can only surprise people and work his way up from here. And, an agent that I spoke to the other day, who has a couple of players at Tottenham, said one thing that the players have really enjoyed is that he seems to have much more emphasis on attack than they've been used to in recent times. And the drills and the meetings that they've had definitely seem like there'll be more attractive brand of football to be seen at Tottenham. So I understand that why, if you're a hardcore Tottenham fan, you'd be skeptical about all this and not particularly looking forward to the new season. But you're going to make new signings. You have a different philosophy. You've got a new boss that wants to prove himself. You've got a new sporting director. You've got a whole new setup here. Just look forward to it. There's no point being down on your club before a ball's been kicked. You might as well look forward to it. And hopefully soon you'll have a couple of players through the door that build your optimism.
Yeah, no, listen, I think it's sometimes in football, and the one big case in point that stands out to me was when Wayne Rooney left Everton. The thought was in the press and the pundits were talking that they were just going to have a terrible season. The best season Everton have ever had in Premier League history the following year, where they qualified for the Champions League. And fair enough, that Champions League run didn't do particularly well, but it was still a very good season for them. So I would be quietly optimistic. Of course, the Harry Kane situation is going to play a big part. There've been kind of reports in the last few days that he might throw his toys out of his pram when he comes back to training, transfer requests. I know you reported last week that City are likely to pursue, with maybe a bigger than £100 million bid coming in for him. Is there any kind of updates around what's going on? Because he's obviously due in a few weeks' time to return to training. Would you expect see the Kane situation pick up pace then?
Yeah, I mean, this week's really a dead week for any of the England players. So like Grealish and Rice and Kane, there's not really anything to report because they genuinely are just like on holiday and switched off right now. There's no need for them to do anything. They know the situations they're still going to be there when they get back, and their agents work on that more than them anyway. So I don't think that the Kane situation is moving on right now. Obviously, there's discussions to be had here. Kane still wants to leave Tottenham. Tottenham aren't going to let him. So we're still in the same boat we were back in May or whenever he told Gary Neville that he wanted to leave. I do think that if City come in with that 100 million, then Kane's going to push and be like, look, the money is there. That is what I'm worth. Take it. And that's when things could potentially become tense. As I said before, Tottenham is still adamant. They've told Nuno that he can plan for life with Kane. Nuno wants to try playing a front two next season. So he's actually got a vision of Danny Ings playing up front with Harry Kane. And, you know, there might even be that they sign another forward as well, but that wouldn't be to replace Harry Kane. That would just be another backup option to Son and Kane and, you know, Ings or whoever else comes in. Because they are pretty short in that area if you do want to try a front two. So we'll have to wait and see, because it's going to be one of the storylines of the summer that's still going to drag on. It'll probably drag on to that last week of the transfer window because of the way the fixtures have come in, because Man City are their opponents. Kane won't be lining up against Tottenham. There's no chance Levy lets that happen. So yeah, at the moment, this week is pretty much guesswork because there's not much going on. But I think beginning of the month, that's when we start to find out. That's when Kane has to start pushing for this and deciding that, you know, he wants to get things moving, and that's when City need to back him up by actually coming in with that money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be. I've noticed that lull in the news that you've mentioned, and I think it's as you say, in a week or so's time, it's really going to start to pick up. Mark here with a super chat says, Terry Boss, I have to say, Dean Jones is a great addition to the channel. Great voice, talks super well, calming, different levels to this show every week. It's a nice compliment there by Mark.
I paid him to say that, mate. I gave him that $5 to throw in that comment. Cheers, Mark.
If anyone's got any questions for Dean in relation to any transfers, the stream is going to go to member-only chat right now for the remainder of the stream, so members can get their questions in. You can super chat your questions in as well, and we'll put all super chat questions to Dean and as many of the member chat questions as we can. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share this stream across your social media platforms as well. A recap on what's been discussed today. Raphaël Varane to Manchester United. Reports coming out of Madrid today that the bid or the completion of this deal is imminent. Dean has said United fans can start to get very excited. This deal is approaching the finishing line. Maybe not as quick as the Madrid press are quoting, but it certainly is moving in. There've been many other updates as well. If you've missed any of them, when this re-uploads at the end of the stream, it'll all be time-stamped for you to come back and have your say and go through things as much as you want. Mohammed here says, morning, Terry and everyone else. Morning to you, Mohammed. Hope you are well. Now, Liverpool Football Club. Actually, as we say that, original base, Annie here says, Dean, what's the situation with Henderson at Liverpool? What's the latest there? Because there was a lot of angry scousers on social media yesterday.
No, obviously this was all leaked at the same time. You know, everybody's got the story at the same time. So I don't know if it's a surprise, to be honest. And I don't know if it's that bad a decision on Liverpool's behalf. Like I can take a step back from this. I'm not a Liverpool fan. And I look at it and I'm like, he's still got 2 years of his contract left. And the way that Liverpool are right now, I'm not sure that they would have seen this as something that they needed to rush into anyway. So I think when you're looking at other players that are key to that Liverpool team, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson, they are key members of that team that you need to sort out immediately. Basically, there is a concern about Mo Salah, and I personally think that he's got one more year at Liverpool and he'll leave. But we'll find out about that. At the moment, there's just not that interest there, and that's partly COVID related, because I think even if that hadn't come along, I think Salah might have even gone by now. But in terms of Henderson, he's not going to leave in this window. Like there's no chance that Liverpool are going to let him leave in the same time as Wijnaldum's gone, because your whole team starts to fall apart. I understand the concern, and you think, oh, he deserves more respect than this. But you've got a 31-year-old midfielder here that has just had an injury, that has got 2 years of his contract left anyway. He's not the type of player that's going to start throwing his toys out the pram and demand a transfer. It seems to me quite reasonable that you would look through this season, and then you would pick up talks again towards the back end of the season and see, right, do we let this go for another year? Liverpool have got no qualms about players leaving on free transfers if they feel they've got the most value out of that player. Their worst case scenario is to sign Jordan Henderson up to a new 4-year contract that takes him through to his 35. He picks up a serious injury next season, and they've lost all value on that player. And they're just giving him wages for the next few years when he's not going to be a key member of that squad. You've got to understand the thinking that comes into the business side of Liverpool when they're making these choices. So that's like the overall picture. Also, you know, Salah, Sadio Mane, Firmino, they're all like 29. Van Dijk's 30. So there's another reason why those guys are 2 years. They've got 2 years on Jordan Henderson in terms of how they're going to play out, when they're going to peak. And he could probably argue that Jordan Henderson already has peaked. Yes, you want that experience, you want that leadership. There's no doubt about that. But I think you can still have that for the next 2 years. In terms of where Jordan Henderson would go, I know Mauricio Pochettino likes him. So if he stays as PSG manager, maybe that opens up at some point. And I think that would be a really nice challenge, actually, and a nice step for Jordan Henderson. But if something like that isn't there, I don't really see where Jordan Henderson's going to go. He's not going to want to go and join West Ham or Everton after he's been winning the Champions League and League with Liverpool and becoming this legend at the club and an icon. Been there for 10 years, which I know Liverpool fans will argue that's why he deserves more respect. But they can't just go and give him the value and length of a contract that he's asking for because he's been there for 10 years. Like, clubs don't make decisions like that anymore. They did once upon a time, to be fair, but increasingly they're not.
Yeah, and I saw, I think, an article from James Pearce talking about the same thing around it's FSG are now starting this process of starting to almost clear the house of the aging players. They don't want to become stale. They want to maintain. It's a little bit hyperbolic and maybe a bit banterish to say, but they're not a selling club as such. But you pull on Mo Salah there, it almost makes sense for them to cash in on Mo Salah just as he's slightly maybe passing his peak or entering it, and then reinvest that money for someone that you can get 5, 6, 7 years out of and maintain that value. Is that very much the thinking with the likes of Mo Salah, who's been one of the best inside forwards in the league in Europe? You mentioned that, maybe only having 1 year left. Is that purely because Liverpool want to reinvest the value of the player, or is it more to do with Mo Salah and looking for a different challenge?
Mo Salah is just extremely ambitious, and while he's loved being at Liverpool, he doesn't see this as the end of his journey. So that's why he started to give interviews in the last 12 months, hinting at the next step for him. It's not out of disrespect. It's purely led by the fact that he wants to be recognised as being in that bracket, I guess, of top tier players, because I still think he feels that he's not considered to be there. Yes, when Liverpool won the league, like he just about got that credibility, but then it waned a bit, and I think he wants to get back to being there. He's got to figure out which club he would get that at. I think that ideally he saw it as being in La Liga with Barcelona or Real Madrid. Don't know if those avenues are going to open up because of the financial situations around those clubs, and also the type of player that they're both looking to sign over the next 2 years. But Mo Salah is ambitious. He's doing this as well, not just for himself, but for his country, for Egypt. He wants his profile reflected in his country's profile, and for them to have one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world, which is what he believes he can become. that the talks never really got going last season over the new contracts and stuff. Like, I think him and Liverpool would have thought they might have, but it doesn't mean they won't happen. It doesn't mean they can't happen. It just means that Mo Salah is very open-minded about what happens in the next stage of his career, and that's just a personal thing. That's not any more than that.
Yeah, and I think that makes football fans never like hearing that about their own clubs. But Man United went through this with Cristiano Ronaldo. We were never from day one the end goal as an example. And I think football fans have got to start to realize that status for certain football players means everything. You see a lot of disrespect towards Arsenal. Why would a James Maddison join them? Because they're Arsenal Football Club, and there is this element of, if I do well at Arsenal, my status in the game rises to another level. Equally, if you can bring one of those teams, one of the things Mo Salah has done, the Mo Salahs and the Manes and the Hendersons, I say this with respect, that this is the best Liverpool team in the Premier League era. We know that because they've won the Premier League and Champions League, and they've achieved things that past legends, with all due respect to the Robbie Fowlers and the McManamans and the Owens and the Gerrards, they've done things that none of those players have done and achieved. And it stands to reason that Mo Salah now, do you know what? I now want to go and do that at Real Madrid or Barcelona. I want to, I would look at Real Madrid in this situation. Since Messi's been at Barca, I don't feel like Real Madrid have dominated the league for a 2 or 3 year period on the bounce. Does that make sense? Where they've been the best team. Messi's coming towards the end of his life cycle. What a great time to go and join Real Madrid and maybe turn them into that 2 or 3 year dominant team, which hasn't been done for nearly 20 years. The status you then achieve in the game is massive. And I think that people have to understand that some people chase money as their key motivator, which is fine. Some people chase sort of club legendary status. Others chase the multiple goals. Like some boxers, they want to be world champion at 3 or 4 different weight categories. Do you know what I mean? Or other people, other fighters in this world. For instance, I think someone like Conor McGregor, it's all he looks at legacy as well. Who brings in as many viewers as me? It's all about the viewers and the money, and everyone's got a different motivation. So I think it stands to reason as to why he might want to go. Let's have a little look at some of these comments here. A lot of these member comments are not really questions. I don't know what they are. They're people talking to each other on here. I love some of these comments. I never really understand them when I just read them out loud. The one for here from Mohammed says, will Liverpool eventually buy any players, Dean?
Yeah, they will. They'll sign someone in this window. I think they're just trying to figure out what their budget is and who's leaving for sure. So I think their business will come late. I don't think they're going to do anything that's going to blow the other teams out of the water. They're not going to go and surprise us all and sign Haaland or something. But they'll strengthen the squad. Even the guys that cover the club aren't sure to what degree they should expect at the moment, because they want to see who does leave, how much cash is opened up, how much of the wage structure is opened up before they see which of these targets is genuinely realistic. So, yeah, look, Liverpool fans, don't think you're not signing anyone. Like, someone will come in, but the fact is they've got a core of a squad there that was fine. They've got players returning from injury that were missing last season. You're still going to have one of the best squads in the Premier League. And Liverpool know that, and they know that they've got a collective motivation and understanding that a lot of the other rivals don't have. It's been built over the last 3 years, and they want to go back and win the title again next season. And to be honest, they want to do it with as much of the core of the squad that did it last time as possible. So we'll see whether they can do that.
Yeah, I think Liverpool the money side of it is always key. I spoke to an agent very well connected to Liverpool Football Club 3 or 4 months ago, and he just kind of laughed at all we'll only sign a massive player if a massive player leaves, and we've got to sell before we buy. It's as simple as that. And I think until more of them fringe players are gone, they're just almost sitting on their. They may be forced into going in for someone. If Sal Niguez and Basuma and all their linked players were days away from joining other clubs, they're going to have to whack sooner rather than later, because they'll end up with nobody. But yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see. Chris here says, so FSG do have money. They just refuse to spend it, is what Chris is saying. I'm not sure that's exactly what Dean said. I just think...
No, they do deliver like when you need them to. Like, the fact that they went and spent all that money a couple of years ago to get ahead of all the other teams in a bid to try and win the Premier League and it paid off shows that, you know, the club can do it. It just has to be done at the right time and on the right players. Like, just because you go and spend £50 million on a player doesn't mean you're going to have a good season. And that's the problem with the transfer window and having a deadline and the hype and excitement around it all, is that so many fans believe that if their side isn't making 5 signings, that their team is weaker. Well, sometimes you're actually stronger because you've still got that collective that the other teams haven't got, because they're trying to fit players into their squad. And, you know, look, Chelsea took a long time to get going last season under Lampard, and, you know, maybe Tuchel just took over at the perfect time. But you look at, you know, United signing Van der Beek, like that looked like a really good signing at the time, and doesn't work for whatever reason, and you're still waiting to see if he can transition. And, you know, even Kai Havertz last season, like, they've signed one of the most exciting players in the world, and for 4 or 5 months, people were doubting him and saying it was a waste of money, and they'd rather have signed somebody else. So, you know, just try and stay level-headed, really. I know it's difficult in football. We all struggle with it, but it is important.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I think everyone's... What I would say to Liverpool fans as well is Sancho's not even announced yet. Arsenal have... If we just look at the top 6 for a minute, Sancho's not announced, but it's happening. Arsenal have signed Tavares and Lokonga. Ben White is on his way. So 2 players, 2 up-and-coming players, and then first teamer. Leicester have signed 2 youngsters. No one else has done anything. So it's not as though Liverpool are behind the curve of everybody else. Yeah. Do you get the sense this summer there's also this element of maybe waiting for a deal or two to kind of create a knock-on effect? Or, you know, you've almost seen, for instance, Suma linked to Arsenal and to Liverpool. You've seen Ruben Neves linked to Arsenal, Man United, and to Liverpool. Do you think it almost takes one of those types of players to sign for someone to, like, shrink the market for maybe more of a reaction from other teams? So, well, actually, look, you know, one of our main targets is now gone. We've got to act sooner rather than later.
I think that more of the case is really that this has just been such a complicated time to do transfers, and the window's reasonably small, because from the season ending to the Euros starting and the Copa America starting, there was only a couple of weeks. So a lot of players and agents weren't around anyway. Then you've got the tournament, which takes them up a month. Now you've got the gap where anyone involved in the latter stages of that tournament are missing for 2 or 3 weeks. And then you're already in the start of August, and then you've got literally 30 days to get your business done, or it goes into the start of September, wherever it is. But yeah, you've got like this very short 3 or 4 week period of intense negotiations. And that's why it always comes down to that last week. That's why everything is always focused on that deadline week. And that's what clubs continue to do. And so I think that that's more of the case. I don't think that clubs are led by other clubs a lot of the time. Like, each club has a different philosophy or method of signing players. And like you say, there hasn't actually been that much legit business in the Premier League yet. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of soundings out. There's a lot of pursuits, but there's not many deals have been concluded, not significant ones. They will all come in August. And look, if your team gets to the last week, and that's when you can start to panic a little bit. I understand that, especially if you start to pick up an injury or two, like Liverpool's experienced in the past. But for right now, you know, heading to the 20th of July, I don't think this is anyway like a time when most clubs are looking to do business on the back of major tournaments ending like less than 10 days ago.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Patience is something for a lot of people. Lots going on. There's no doubt about it. Let's take a look at some more. Get some of your questions in view. If you have got questions for Dean, get them in. A lot of statements, not a lot of questions. The Lingard news, Shane, has already come. So when we finish this, you'll be able to find the timestamp and go back and look at that. We've already given an update on Lingard today. Chris George as well already had the update on Ruben Neves and his potential move to Manchester United. There have been a few questions from people, Dean, asking about the situation with Sam Johnson to Arsenal and Arsenal's pursuit of a midfielder. Is there anything new or different in that scenario over the last few days?
Nothing particularly that I've heard, to be honest. I know that someone I spoke to a couple of days ago, I just said, where are we at with Arsenal? Most of the focus was talked about Aaron Ramsdale and how they were trying to get that done, and where their limitations were on it. the midfield is a big situation, really. I think Bissouma's out the window now, so that one's not going to happen. So they're just trying to, again, I guess similar to how Tottenham have like got so many targets that they're knocking off one by one. Arsenal are taking a similar approach to it. And then it's that like creative player and then the striker. I think the striker is going to be an interesting one as to who they can actually get there. I know a lot of focus is also going into how they can get Lacazette out of the club. They're really struggling with that. There's no takers, there's no inquiries, there's no offers, nothing. But Lacazette is somebody that I think that they feel would be better off moved on. So there's little things like that need to happen within each club to kind of get that momentum moving. But Arsenal undoubtedly going to be one of the busiest clubs in the next month or so.
Yeah, and I have seen a lot of kind of news about Arsenal confirming. I do have a lot of respect to you, Dean, because you know we obviously speak privately about sort of what you do and you don't share. Sort of your lack of desire to be a social media star and big on Twitter. What I do find really interesting is, you know, 4 or 5 weeks ago you spoke about the £100 million price for Declan Rice, and then some really big outlets share it a few days ago, and it's like that's not new news. The situation about Arsenal spending. I remember when you said it on this show, it could be sort of between 100 and 150 million, but actually if they sell the right players, it could rise up to around 200 million. It was almost that's never happening. And then a few big outlets in the last few days, I have to call it out and say, listen, we heard it here first. Of course, I'm promoting you, I'm promoting the show. But I think Arsenal fans, you've said it consistently now for 5-6 weeks. It's Arsenal are going to have a very, very busy summer. They've had to, a little bit like Spurs at the moment, they're casting that net very wide and far in terms of the players they're looking at, because they're looking at players that there's a lot of competition around. But I think they've had a really, really good window, and I think that there's more to come from them still. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Gunnar King says it still feels weird seeing Arsenal be proactive and getting stuck into signing players early in the window. Long may it continue.
Yeah.
Which is true. I mean, you could argue, I mean, 2 of the worst run top 6 clubs in the last 10 years have been Man United and Arsenal. But actually this summer, I mean, one of the things I read, and I don't know if you've seen this, Dean, maybe it's the Dan theory, or maybe I've read it in an article, I forget now. But actually, the owners of both clubs were just were adamant the Super League would happen and they would have riches coming in forever. And almost this element of, now that they know the Super League is gone, dead and buried, the only way to, if they are leeches, the only way to keep capitalizing off their clubs is to keep their clubs near the top and relevant and Champions Leagues and fans interested. And the only way you're going to do that is by making them decent or very good on the football field. Does that make sense? It's almost the knock-on effect of not getting into the Champions League seems like it's making them behave in a much better way.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like a reality check, really. I think on the back of COVID and then not qualifying for Europe, Arsenal were just left in a situation. It looked dreadful at the end of the season because they really were like, who is going to join us now? Like, where are we heading? And in a way, it did them a favour because it gave them a few weeks, a month even, to clearly plot what they wanted to do and where they could aim. So they were doing business, Arsenal and Man United, really, at a time when some other clubs were standing still. And, you know, the fact that Arsenal were casting their net so wide helped them as well. But yeah, deals like Ben White, it just gave them that extra oomph and that extra need to go and do it because they know that they can't compete for Varane. So they, you know, while United might have been interested in Ben White at some point, they're obviously going to have their focus taken away from that for a moment. And that's when Arsenal were able to push and get that deal done. So I think that it's all relative to your circumstances. Certain clubs you can see being ambitious and trying hard right now. Arsenal, Aston Villa, Tottenham to some degree. And then you've got Man United, and then you've got clubs like Chelsea waiting, Man City waiting. They're waiting for the right moment because they've got a lot of money. They just got to wait for that moment to spend that purposefully. And for Man City, that's Kane and Grealish. They want both. For Chelsea, it's Haaland. If it's not him, it's Lukaku. And that's what their pure focus, or Declan Rice as well. That's what their focus is. So it's better that your team has that focus and tries to get those guys than take this scattergun approach and end up signing like just random people that just sign for the sake of it on transfer deadline day. So I think that's that's something to keep in mind.
No doubt. Yuvi here says, when do you think Chelsea will bid for Haaland?
I mean, I that would literally be guesswork. Before the start of the season is I'd say is as good as I can give you on that. They'll want to know in advance of heading into that 2-week stretch when you're getting down to deadline, like where they stand. So I would imagine you're looking at the beginning of August for when Chelsea need to get their focus on Haaland and know if that's feasible or not.
Yeah, it's one of them ones. It's soon, before the end of the window. That's what I'd say. Yeah, leave it open ended. Dean, listen, I really appreciate you coming on again with us today. All of the viewers, massive thank you to all of you. Make sure you've smashed that like button for us today. It's very important to the terrace that you get that done and that you subscribed as well. We're back later on today with some more content for you. But until then, take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God bless. And